Telecomicus. Hey, good morning. Unfortunately, this is the only thing I can say in in your language, unfortunately, and I will have to deliver my presentation in English with Spanish accent, so please bear with me. So yes, my name is Inma Farfán Velasco, and I'm project manager working at the European Commission, more precisely the Publications Office of the European Union. And today in my presentation, I would like to bring to you some insights of the wide European perspective, how we're making Europe fit for a digital age, and more importantly, the important role that open data has in it. So just to give like a bit of the content of my presentation, I would like to start with providing a state of play or a sneak peek of the general European data policies as we know, and especially what are the main challenges and opportunities at European level. Then I will introduce you to my work. I work at European Data Portal. I'm not going to advance you information, but I will introduce you to the different services that we have. Of course, since we are here in Tallinn, Estonia, we will deep dive a bit more into what is Estonia doing from the European perspective on open data. It was already addressed before in the presentation, but I will try to address it from a more from a wider perspective. And then I will zoom out again, talking about the different challenges in Europe on data maturity and open data in general, and how we can also cope and face these challenges. So first, what is at stake in Europe? We can say that we are in a very decisive moment for Europe, because we stand at a moment where we have the ambition of boosting European competitiveness and innovation at European level throughout all the different countries, especially to position Europe as a global player in the digital economy. Yet the numbers are showing that there's still ground to cover and things to be improved. Just to give you some data on this, the Joint Research Center of the European Commission reported that out of all the global generative AI activities in Europe, only 7% are covered by the European Union, against competitors such as China with a 60% of the total coverage and 12% from United States. That show us that there is still ground to cover in terms of innovation and competitiveness in the digital market. So if we had to go into the different challenges, we can see that we are facing a structural fragmentation at European level. So first, we have to put the responsibility at European level, of course. We have over 100 overlapping legislation on digital markets, and at the same time, we have to bear in mind the complexity of the European Union with 27 member states and around 270 national and sectoral authorities. So somehow we can say that there's still some silos to break. But yet, there's one opportunity, and this opportunity, of course, is data, and that's why these sort of conferences are very important nowadays. So data has demonstrated not to be a byproduct of the digital economy, but a very important strategic asset that can really drive change, not only the digital market, but also to position Europe. Just to give you some numbers, at the European Union, it was published recently, the European Data Market Study, that I really recommend you to go through it, where we can see a state of play about the potential of data in Europe. And it says that in 2025, data is expected to contribute to the data economy around 630 billion euros, and in 5 years, in 2030, up to 800 billion euros. This means like almost 5% of the European Union GDP. So we can see really the potential that data has for the overall economy. But it's not only data, or more precisely, high-quality interoperable data. It's important to create a single market of data. We saw it in the past by the different European Union policies, that it has to be a cross-linked single market of data, where data flows in an independent, safe manner, and we also unlock all the potential that data has for Europe. And here is where your role is very important here. Public sector plays an essential role in the data economy, is one of the most intensive producers of data. 25% of the general data produced come from the from the public sector, and is responsible of 30% of the overall data reuse. So here, public sector from not only a national level, but regional and local authorities is essential to be on board on this strategy to make it happen. But now a little bit on the theory of the European data legislative landscape. As I mentioned before, the European Union have put forward, especially in the last 5 years, different European policies and legislations to boost this data economy and digital competitiveness. I'm going to go very quickly through some of them. So the first I wanted to mention, and is one of the milestones of our work, is the Open Data Directive. So the Open Data Directive is replacing or building up on the Public Sector Information Directive, and it speaks about the importance of making data available by default, especially from the public sector. So it really involves public sector in the whole process, making these data sets open by design and by default in a machine-readable format. Then we also had two pieces of information, main legislative acts. So one was the Data Governance Act. So the Data Governance Act wants to build trust in data sharing by allowing data access and data reuse. So it doesn't only address open data that can be made available for everybody in an open format, but also protected data sets. It boasts also what we know as the common European data spaces. So these sectorial data spaces in the health sector, transport sector, to boost data sharing across the sector and to provide further opportunities. And it also established the European national single information points. It also recognizes and facilitates data altruism for those organizations and entities, companies that want to make this data available by default, and data intermediary services. Then to move on, to build up from the Open Data Directive, we had the implementing regulation on high-value data sets. I will later talk more about it, but just to give you a bit of an introduction. So the high-value data sets give further definition about which dataset have to be made available for everybody by different categories, and a specific definition on how to make it available. But I will speak about that later on. And then another important legislation was the Data Act that combines the Data Governance Act, but tackling a different type of data sets. So the Data Act is more focused on making a competitive market in business to business or business to consumers data sharing. So with the development of technologies such as the Internet of Things, with the Data Act, it allows that consumers have easy access to this data generated by these services. And then, last but not least, not released now for the moment, is the European Union Data Strategy. So the European Union Data Strategy, it was one of the milestones of the new Commission, European Commission this year, because we see that we don't only need to create the single market of data, but we should be focused on the strategic objectives that we have in the years to come. We see that there are specific strategic sectors such as artificial intelligence, semiconductors, information technologies that should be boosted in the next years to come. And with this strategy, it wants to create a unified framework, put together all this legislation to scale up on the development of artificial intelligence technologies with access to these data sets. But okay, enough blah blah. I spoke about all this legislation, but all the theory behind it, but how to make it happen, because we see here different legislation. Sometimes like there can be overlaps between one another, but how can we turn this policy or this legislation into practice? So here, where I come is the European Data Portal. So the European Data Portal really makes these policies and reality. So we can say that it's a pragmatic way to see everything put in one place and turning this dream into reality. So a few words about the European Data Portal. So the European Data Portal is managed by the Publications Office of the European Union, where I work, the interinstitutional office inside of the European Commission, and is a central point of access to data sets from the public sector. When we mean public sector, we don't only mean, of course, the Estonian Data Portal, but also regional and local public administrations. So we can say that the European Data Portal connects data, information, and knowledge by different services and support the implementation of European data policies with real services and real solutions for them. So we can say that we are a bridge between data providers and data reusers. So by this entry point via the Data Europa EU or the European Data Portal. So regarding our data providers, we have 1.9 million data sets, so a vast amount of data sets coming from different data providers, more than 90 data providers. As I mentioned before, it doesn't only come from national, regional, local data portals, but also geoportals, sectorial data portals in this case, and supranational bodies, meaning the European Commission, the European Parliament, the European Investment Bank. They also publish through the portal. And we put all this information together in an interoperable manner to make it available for everybody. And then we also make all these data providers connect with data reusers. So we have a wide network of data reusers. We can see that it comes from the public sector because they want to access data from other institutions, but also from private sector. We see that now there's specific emphasis on creating value out of data sets and creating especially economic value. So they want to use these data sets in order to do that. For researchers, of course, and then for journalists or general public who want to make evidence-based decisions. But now that I explained to you a bit about the European Data Portal, as I mentioned previously, we are sort of the bridge between policy and technology, or policy and solutions. But how are these solutions placed in the portal? And I will give a few minutes to talk about that. So first is that, as I mentioned before, we support the implementation of European data policies. And in this respect, we help on the implementation of high-value datasets implementing regulation. Mentioned previously, high-value datasets are these datasets that have a special value at environmental, economic, and social level, and that's why the European Union considers that all these data sets, given the high value that they have for the general data economy, they should be made available for everybody. We did the European Union did a landscaping on 6 categories: geospatial, earth observation, environment, meteorological, statistics, companies, company ownership, and mobility. So these are the baseline from which you have to make available these data sets. And they have to be made available in a specific format, so in open format, like with open licensing requirements, and like allowing machine readability. So public sector have to make these high-value data sets available for data reuse, and this was implemented from June of last year. So we have to say that now we are in the process of onboarding European data providers to the European Data Portal to make all these data sets available there. So Estonia has been like a great contributor to this initiative because they already have these datasets published on the European Data Portal, 71 datasets in the specific section on high-value data that you can find there, especially on topography, energy, mineral resources, etc. Regarding the Data Governance Act, we also support the implementation of this policy by giving access to the European Register of Protected Data held by the public sector. A lot of jargon. So basically, just in a nutshell, the European Data Portal was giving access to open data sets. But with the Data Governance Act, we realized that we also have to give access to these protected data sets. How to do that? So at the European Data Portal, we made available one single access point from where data reusers can see what are the protected data sets that the different countries have, and they can request access. And then it has to be up to the country to decide whether they can have access to these data sets or not. So with this, you are creating this one-stop shop where users can really have an overview about what are the protected data sets that are under the ownership of specific entities, and they can request access. So it gives rather more transparency on what are the data sets that are made available or not that made available for the public sector. Estonia, on this respect, is currently working on setting up this protected data catalog, or so-called the National Single Information Point, to make it available in the future of the European data portal. And then, again, we have other exercise that is a bit more broader, and already it was mentioned in a previous presentation, so I want to dive a little bit more into the concept of it. So it's the Open Data Maturity Assessment. So one of the milestones that we have at the European Data Portal is the Open Data Maturity Report. It's a yearly assessment that we do to European countries to see how they are progressing of open data maturity. It has been already 10 years that we have been doing this yearly exercise, and it's based on a questionnaire sent to the different official public authorities, and then we do this benchmarking exercise to see how they are progressing on this respect. So we have normally, depending on the year, but we had 35 countries participating on this exercise, not only EU member states, but also EFTA countries and also candidate countries. So we can see how they are interested on being onboarded on this initiative. So regarding the methodology has been curated throughout the years, because as the digital strategy is also evolving and the digital market is progressing, also methodology has to be updated according to that. So with the Open Data Maturity Assessment, we address 4 different dimensions. So the dimensions are policy, portal, quality, and impact. And yes, with this, we have qualitative and quantitative data collected to make it available on the portal. So on the policy side, we look at more the action plans, what are the different strategies and policies, regulation at national level that the country has put in place. With the portal, of course, as the name says, we look at the the national data portal, what are the different features, how they're connecting with the users, the accessibility of this portal, and how it's fit for purpose. On the quality dimension, we look more at the data and the metadata quality, on how they are they're making their data sets available and whether they're up to date and according to European standards. And on the impact side, the dimension of impact, we see how national countries are progressing success and how they are measuring data reuse with other public with the general public. So very brief, because it was already mentioned before. So Estonia, through the eyes of the Open Data Maturity Assessment, we can say from a European perspective that it has been a great example of success and progress, because from the beginning that they participated in this exercise, they were from the follower perspective to a trendsetter. So from the 27th position of the Open Data Maturity Assessment, we reached the 5th position. So it was a huge jump, but we also saw that there were a lot of improvements in the last years on this respect. So I will go very deep, a bit on each dimension. So we can see that the policy and impact are the ones that are more they've been especially worked on from Estonia. On the portal side, we saw that there was a new open data portal with very high quality features. They also did a landscaping exercise to understand data users, and they also took into consideration different feedback loops that were helping to build further services in the national data portal. On the policy impact and quality, okay, first to explain, the Open Data Maturity Assessment had 3 new dimensions from 2018. That's why you don't see them here. But from the policies side, we see that they have been very active on implementing this data legislative act, and at the same time they've been putting in place action plans and appointing specific public authorities in order to coordinate all the legal action on the data economy that has been reflected on the results of this study. On the impact side, we saw that they put a lot of, the Estonia has put a lot of emphasis on the strategic awareness via stakeholder engagement activities, such as, of course, this conference is one great example of that, but also competitions, working groups to engage with other stakeholders on the power of data. And last but not least, we have the quality side. So it's on the metadata up to date, and we appreciate that also Estonia was making good progress on this respect. So more precisely on the cooperation between Estonia and the European Data Portal, Estonia has not only contributed to the European Data Portal, but also contributed to the general service of the that we currently have. So they contributed to the report on best practice from the Open Data Maturity Assessment a couple of years ago. I invite you to go through it because it has very interesting insights about how they made such progress. And we've been inviting them to contribute to the training offer of the Data Europa Academy. So the Data Europa Academy is the learning hub that we have inside of the European Data Portal that offers training to the public sector. In case you are interested, it's free for everybody. So I really suggest you go through it. However, just to zoom out, because we see that there has been a lot of progress, no? And Estonia is a great example of this success, but I wanted to have the opportunity here to have a zoom out and see what are the main challenges that have been reflected at European level, not only Estonia, but also in other European countries. According to the different dimensions, in terms of policy, we see that still with all this European legislation, there's a mixed readiness on the Open Data Maturity Assessment. We see that although Estonia is making very good progress on this respect, other countries are not yet on this process of implementing all these policies, specifically on the high-value data sets. There's still work to be done on this policy dimension. And at the same time, there are other challenges, such as, for example, the licensing of the data sets is like a big question that we also work with our data providers. So data licensing is one of the key aspects to make this data available for everybody, and countries still are facing issues on how to license these data sets and how to consider data ownership. On the portal dimension, some countries are more advanced on portal features if you compare with other countries. And one main issue we saw is that we have to make the portal fit for purpose. We have to make a portal fit for the user's needs. So in order to do that, although it's a big platform, it's essential that we interact with our users, because if we don't interact with our users, how are we going to turn it into useful services for them? We can just keep developing new products, but finally nobody's going to use them. So this is one of the issues we spotted on the portal dimension, that countries need to interact more with the users in order to do that. On the quality side, is one of the I would say one of the dimensions that has faced less progress, because still there has to be put this national countries have to onboard local and regional public sector, and sometimes they don't have that high in the priority of their agenda, and they may face issues on the data quality and the technical progress of these data sets. On the impact side, they have issues also on measuring impact and difficulty to track how the data has been used. At the same time, normally I also call it like the fifth overarching dimension, that is the fact that there's the digital skills gap. On this respect, not only on the public sector, but at wide European matter. The Digital Economic Index has shown that only 45% of European citizens have the basic digital skills. So this is an important gap to cover. And resource capacity. Some institutions are not putting enough resources in order to advance on the digital landscape, on the digital transition. And at the same time, we have also the regulatory efficiency and duplications, and further boosting funding is also needed. But how to address these challenges altogether? Okay, we were not to try to end up with a very pessimistic view on this. The European Data Portal is here to support you in the whole process. Very quickly to go through it. So on the different dimensions, the European Data Portal has different services to support public sector, not only at national, but also regional and local level to progress on open data maturity. On the policy, apart from these services to implement policies, we also have several studies, guidelines, and tools to support the implementation of high-value data sets, national single information points, etc. So this is available for you. On the portal, as I mentioned, is an entry point to all these data sets and is open source for everybody. So in case there are certain features that you may find interesting, we're happy to provide some best practices on some experiences on how this development of the portal has been for us. Then on the quality side, we saw that there's a need for us as European Union to provide wide European guidelines on this respect. That's why we developed the metadata and data quality guidelines. So they provide some best practices and not the best practices on how to work on the metadata and data quality. At the same time, for those who are not that advanced on data metadata quality, there are also trainings on this respect. On the Data Europa Academy. So it's a course on improving open data and metadata quality. It's available for everybody. So you have webinars, reports, and resources in case you would like to go through it. And then there's one project that is still ongoing, is the metadata quality assurance. So it is a platform that tracks the progress on metadata quality of all the catalogs published on the portal. Currently, we're updating the methodology, so this is work in progress. We're working with different member states in order to do that, so this is going to be updated very soon. And on the impact, I was smiling before because it's one of the or hidden spots because we also have issues on measuring impact on open data maturity, and we're still working on a methodology to track progress about what we're doing with the data sets. For the time being, we have impact data stories and reports, and we do a lot of exercise on monitoring use cases. One of the reports is the use case observatory. So it's a 3-year monitoring exercise where we track around, I think it was like 50 different applications that are using open data from the public sector. And we see the progress throughout the years on how they are progressing and using these data sets for a specific economic purpose. So I invite you to go through it because we just published the last report. And we also have the indicators of the open data maturity assessment that we are currently updating, but you can also have a look in case you are interested. Well, so after all the content that I provided to you, some main takeaways. What is clear is that data is essential for a more competitive Europe and to boost innovation and to help on the development of these new technologies. The European Union continues improving with the open data maturity spectrum, and especially on all these overarching dimensions such as quality, impact, policy, and portal. But Estonia is for us a real example of transformational change and a good practice that can be used for the other countries. Some cross-cutting challenges persist, and it's important to raise awareness and engage with local and regional community in order to onboard them and to all be on board in this digital strategy. And last but not least, and is one of the main things I wanted to pass to you with this presentation, is that the European Data Portal is here to support you. We can provide guidance, tools, best practices to strengthen a more data-driven public sector community. Having said this, thank you so much for your time, and I'm here for your questions, if any.
Thank you very much, Inma. Before the coffee break, let's take the questions. There are lots of them, but let's take 3 most popular. The first one is, acronym of GDPR became as a synonym to you cannot do, you get punished if you do, and opposite to innovation and openness. What are the plans to change such feeling?
Okay. Well, so I have to say that the GDPR, in this specific respect, has been one of the biggest milestones on data protection, and it should be safeguarded before making these data sets available. That's why the Data Governance Act is addressing all these data sets that not necessarily should be made available for everybody. So it shows like a new prospect of data sharing. So it's not wide data sharing for everybody, but protected data sharing for a specific purpose. So trying to address and overcome this issue on data privacy. But at the same time, I would like to emphasize that open data means that also this information has been anonymized, that has been curated and can be made available for everybody. So you cannot expect confidential data going out there for everybody. That's why the quality work is very important before.
Okay. It's a saying, the USA innovates, China copies, Europe regulates. Are we regulating too much? Is there rather indiscriminate obligation to publish public sector data a form of over-regulation?
Okay, over-regulation was one of the main challenges that I mentioned in my presentation. It's true that the digital market, since it's a very new sector, it has to be regulated in order to ensure that it's according to the European Union values and principles. But at the same time, we should have mixed policies. We cannot only just regulate and not providing the tools for our economies and for the public sector to growth. So it's important that at the same time that we are regulating, we are also boosting private investment. We are providing funding in order to help companies to use data for the public good, and indeed to overcome this regulatory hurdle that we sometimes find.
And the last one, which country has really positively surprised you in terms of open data or AI developments? Maybe a hidden gem.
Well, I wouldn't like to emphasize one in particular, because sometimes it's not about the ones that have higher ranking, but the ones that have made more incredible progress in a very short period of time. So I will feel a bit compromised to say this one is one, but I would say that in the last Open Data Maturity Assessment, the top ranking countries were France, Poland, and also Slovakia. And in Slovakia, we saw a very huge progress on this respect, based on putting a lot of emphasis on data governance and putting this as a priority. So, of course, we can say that this is a good practice, but this can change every year. And I think all the stories are worth mentioning.
Thank you very much. Inma Farfán Velasco, thank you very much once again.